Hello, everybody. Always with this camera. This camera is always different. I think it's because I stream Gundams and I have a slightly different setup for doing Gundam stuff, and then I come back here and do history stuff, and the camera's in a little different position. But hello, everyone, and welcome to Adventures in History. My name is Shane. Welcome to the show. Hope everybody's doing well. Foggage, how's it going? Late bloomer, not late, just on time. A late bloomer is never late. They arrive precisely when they mean to. KP, how's it going? Good to see you. Shmonite is feeling adventurous. This is a good place to be if you feel adventurous. It's a pretty good place. All right, going well. Thank you. Awesome. Good to hear. Things are going pretty well. So, yeah, we're going to talk about some Cold War police stating tonight. Lots of weird stuff that people do to get inside people's brains. It's really tripped out stuff. Hey, look, I'm awake for a viewer request stream. What's up, Matchan? How's it going? How are the classes treating you? I know it's still summer over there, but I seem to recall you saying that you were still working on research stuff. What up, Cave? How's it going? How's things? Yeah, so the show is Adventures in History, but on usually every other Tuesday night, we do viewer requests. So these topics are chosen by the viewers. So this is a little bit of a different take than what we would do on Thursday nights. I'm getting messages here at the very beginning of stuff. Okay, I can get rid of that. All right, so yeah, this particular viewer request was bought and paid for by our very own Foggage Green. It's all good at the moment, catching up on stuff you missed during last term due to life. Yes, life, it happens. And it doesn't wait for us to be ready for it to happen. It just kind of goes, enjoying vacation? Awesome. Good to hear. Life finds a way to do good things and not so great things. But it's good to see you, David. I hope all is well. I saw that you said that things were better in Steve's stream. I won't drag all that out, but good to hear good news. So, yeah, this is... I've been back here and I've got my phone up at the front, so I have completely missed everything on my phone, and I realize that my alarm is probably going off right now. So I was potentially supposed to have jury duty this morning, and didn't end up having to go to jury duty because for whatever reason they just canceled the whole thing. So I was a little worried about how that might affect stream times and stream stuff. So everything is A-okay, doing well. Other than that, today has been fairly okay. I got a little bit ahead in prep. We are going to start a new phase, which will be phase 12 of our World History Through the Ages events that we do on Thursday. We're doing history chronologically, so we'll be looking at this time the 7th century, so the year 600 to 700. And on next Thursday night, we're going to have a really interesting discussion about Japan, which I'm very excited about. Also, because I neglected to do this prior to my wife's birthday, if you've been here for past birthdays, you'll know that my wife, as a gift to her, gets, among other things, this is not her entire gift, my wife gets to do a viewer request stream for herself. So we're going to have a special viewer request stream on Tuesday, so we'll do 2 Tuesdays in a row, and we will specifically be looking at the Reconstruction era in the United States, which I think is an era that a lot of people sort of know about, but don't really know about. And they don't really understand how impactful it was. So that I think that'll be a really interesting stream, and not just for people that are in the United States. I think that a lot of people that look at America today and go, "Why are they still so?" After all of that, a lot of the reason we're still so that way is because of Reconstruction era, which is the period of time basically for, we'll just say roughly 20 years after the American Civil War. So, playing Ghosts of Tsushima. Oh, I want to play that game so badly. I will eventually play Ghosts of Tsushima, and I'm very excited about that game. I love Japanese history. It's one of my kind of niche areas that I've spent more time than normally just staring at. And I watched a friend play the opening scene of that and then no more because I wanted to preserve as much of that experience as I could. It's a beautiful game, and I've heard that it's got a lot of little historical nuggets and stuff along the way to find out, and I'm very excited about getting into that. But all of that is in the future. So next Tuesday we'll have a special viewer request stream as a birthday gift for my wife, and then on Thursday we'll talk about basically the Imperial Reform era of Japan, where the Emperor really decides to kind of take over. You got lucky and managed to get your hands on a PS5, and what is the games you waited to play along? Oh yeah, so you're getting it in the really fancy schmancy, like high res, lots of Ks and all that kind of stuff. I still have a PlayStation 4, but I do have the high def version of PlayStation 4, so I'm sure it will look very nice when I eventually get around to playing it. I don't really need any games right now. I still have games left over from Christmas time last year that I got that I haven't played yet. Partially because I decided to go back and play older games, but that's because I'm an addict and can't stop myself sometimes. But if I was going to play Dark Souls 3, I wanted to play Dark Souls 1 and 2 again before I played Dark Souls 3. It just makes sense. Drawing the longbow with haptic feedback on the new controller is really satisfying. And I did play Spider-Man. Spider-Man is amazing. I haven't played the one with Miles Morales, which I've heard is basically just a port with a couple of different gimmicks because he's got different spider powers. But the Spider-Man game for PlayStation 4 was the most like Spider-Man I have ever felt while playing a game. It's not the first game that's really done Spider-Man completely right, but it's the best game that has done Spider-Man right. And I really, really enjoyed that game. And if you haven't played that yet, I give it 2 big thumbs up. It's very good. But let's talk history, because that's why we're all here, right? At least ostensibly. Okay, so we're talking about specifically tonight the East German police state, which is referred to as the Stasi. But we do need to talk a little bit about how East Germany came about and some of the political groundwork that is the foundation of the Stasi before we get there. So let's do a little bit of a historical primer. And we have to start at a particular meeting, Potsdam, called the Potsdam Conference. And this is in 1945. We could have started at Yalta, but we'll just start here at Potsdam. Potsdam is an important meeting, and specifically it is a meeting between a lot of countries, but the 3 big countries are the United Kingdom, the United States, and Russia. And if you have been around for a little while, you've probably seen this photo. Here we have the leaders of those 3 countries. We've got Winston Churchill, we've got Harry S. Truman, and we've got Joseph Stalin, who are here at the Potsdam Conference. You're seeing a Soviet flag and hearing the USSR national anthem, alas. Yeah, I guess. But anyway, this is a pretty famous photo. I'm pretty sure that if you've been around this area studying it a bit, you've probably seen this photo before. The the reason we have to talk about this is because the agreement that came out of Potsdam is going to be really important to this larger concept of how East Germany develops, right? So during World War II, Stalin and his Red Army had basically conquered the majority of Eastern Europe, including half, well, not quite half, a little bit more like somewhere between a third and a half of Germany, sort of this region right over here. And initially, they had been willing to kind of let these countries go back to their own and kind of do their own thing. But Stalin at Potsdam is going to realize that he is in a much more strong position than he initially thought, and he's going to renege on that joke. He's going to say, like, no, 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 no. I'm not actually going to give up all of these countries. I'm going to keep all of them, and I'm going to administer them and administrate their rebuilding basically by myself. And the UK and the US don't really care for this very much, but especially the UK was very weary. The French had just been liberated and were not necessarily going to be able to be a big help, and the U.S. was sort of fatigued after fighting their whole part of the war. And in fact, at Potsdam, the war in the Pacific was still going on. So neither the U.S. nor the U.K. really wanted to have to stop fighting Germany, which had just surrendered, and turn right around and fight the entire Soviet war machine, which was enormous. So they kind of just let Stalin have it. And this is going to be a pretty important point of order, because this is going to mean that the government that is set up inside of East Germany, which is the portion of Germany that Russia is going to administer, is going to be basically a communist satellite nation. And if you know anything about the Cold War, this is going to mean that they're on the sort of the bad guy side if you are in the West, right? They're in the Warsaw Pact. They're going to be a communist nation. They're going to have a communist party. Now, Stalin ostensibly forms East Germany as a democratic republic, but it is really very far from a democratic republic. Let's be very clear. The elections that happen are only among people that he basically allows. The candidates that win are really only going to be the ones that are going to align themselves with his particular communist values. Now, there are other political parties inside of East Germany, but they have really, really small amounts of power. And what is going to happen very early on, so this is probably around the period of time from basically about 45 until about in 1950-ish, the goal of Stalin inside of East Germany was to create a system of industrial capacity that would be able to follow the same sort of path that the Russian industrial capacity was doing, which is mostly a focus on agriculture and military. So we're going to build tanks and tractors, guns and plows, right? And East Germany had a fairly burgeoning, or this particular region of Germany had a pretty decent industrial capacity prior to World War II, and it had been built up rather extensively by Hitler and his rise of the Third Reich. And a lot of that stuff that was building like domestic stuff or building export stuff is really going to get retooled towards pretty much just making military and agricultural stuff. Oh, an opinion hat. Dun 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 dun. Summon the opinion hat. The opinion hat has been summoned. Be warned, while wearing the opinion hat, everything that comes out of my mouth is really just my opinion. Now, it is backed up by my research, and I mean, I'm not what I would call a completely idiot guy. I do have some idiot tendencies, but not a completely idiot tendency. So, the question is, what country contributed the most to defeating Germany? And KP says Russia. That's not even an opinion. Russia is a good answer. It's probably the right answer, but for the sake of just being argumentative, because I'm wearing the opinion hat, I'm going to say the country that contributed to the most uh, of the defeat of Germany was Germany. Now, you go, wait, what? Follow with me here, peoples. Germany was in a position of European dominance. It had conquered all of Eastern Europe and had basically met itself with Russia in a pact of non aggression. Russia was not particularly interested in getting involved in the war in the first place. Russia was rather happy with the fact that France was getting the crap kicked out of it and that Britain was struggling. And Russia was fine with the idea that the Western European nations were basically being buffeted by this giant border state of Germany. Russia, to a certain extent, was fine with getting rid of Jewish people. They had been according to the Tsarist Russians and even the communist Russians, the Jewish population within Russia was problematic, and they had issues with them. So they really didn't have a lot of beef with Hitler until Germany decided, well, the only people left to challenge us are Russia. We should invade them. And to be fair, Operation Barbarossa was a pretty well planned concept, but here's the thing. You don't start land wars in Russia, you dumb butt. So when that happened, Russia was basically the bear that you don't poke, right? If you are okay with the fact that Russia is going to leave you alone, why you got to go try to conquer them? You are rolling the dice here on something that is not guaranteed in the least, right? Also, this was almost a purely, well, I mean, there's tactical advantage to it, but really there's no way to guarantee that any of your tactics are going to hold. Russia is huge. It's freaking huge. It's the only kind of worry. What's the only kind of wait. Is that the only kind of war you can start in Russia? Well, I mean, you don't have to start a war in Russia at all. Yeah, I mean, you could bomb the crap out of them. And to be, I guess, fair to Hitler, he did bring in the Luftwaffe and do a lot of bombing runs, but that's not how you beat Russia. You beat Russia by not messing with Russia, and when they do screw something up, then you just blow them to smithereens from the air. And you definitely don't blitzkrieg in them. Like, the reason blitzkrieg works so well in Central and Western Europe is that the distances between cities was really small, right? You can drive from some of these big cities in France in a couple of hours, right? So you take Paris, and then 2 days later you can take another city 2 hours down the road. The distance between population centers in Russia is enormous. They had a highway system that was friggin' crazy, and you have to have crap tons of gas, and your supply lines are going to get stretched really far, and you can't just blitzkrieg the tundra, right? It's just not something that was a good move, right? And when Germany decided to put on its big boy, well, they don't wear breeches over there. What would that be? Crap, I'm losing my word here. The strappy things with the short shorts. Lederhosen. Yeah, when you strap on your lederhosen and you go into invade Russia, you don't blitzkrieg Russia. It just doesn't functionally work. If you're going to attack Russia, you bomb everything to smithereens, and then you move in very slowly to pick up the pieces. And you continuously attack their industrial capacity instead of trying to hold on to cities. So another part of the Barbarossa that was an idiot move was, we're going to go in, we're going to try to hold these cities because they are so far apart. We're going to need places where we can retool and refuel and do all this stuff. So we can't destroy the whole cities. We have to get there and hold the cities. And that means you're going to be in charge of the giant population of Russians. And if you note, like, the first few advances of Operation Barbarossa were very, very effective because they were close to the borders, they had short supply lines, and the Russians weren't ready for it. But as the Germans pushed further and further into Russia, they were like, oh crap, now we've got to deal with all of these people, we've got to deal with all of this space, and we don't have the capacity to keep pushing stuff deeper into this distance, and that's where they screwed themselves. You beat Russia by being a sovereign nation on its borders, but not loyal to it. Hey, man. Hats off to the Ukrainians. They're fighting a war that they did not ask for, that they did not deserve, and they're giving Russia more than Russia ever thought about. They're going to lose if they don't get more help, though. Russia can outlast them. Russia outlasted Germany. They can absorb damage. They have a massive amount of population. They can take body blows. The idea that the Ukrainians can't strike back inside of Russia is debilitating. The fact that the Ukrainian Air Force can't establish air dominance over its own cities is debilitating. Honestly, the longer Russia stays, the better their infrastructure is going to be, and the more they're going to be able to move around, and the more they're going to win. Which is evidenced by the fact that they took most of the Luhansk province by this point. And they're mostly in control of Donetsk as well, so they've got almost all of Donbass at this point. We'll see what happens. Why can't Ukraine attack inside of Russia? First off, they don't have the manpower to do so. They have to keep all of their soldiers where they are to hold on to the territory that they are currently holding. They don't have free soldiers in a big enough area, in a big enough mass that they could basically effectively counter-invade Russia. Also, their northern border with Belarus is completely fortified as well. So if we look at where we're at here, this big city or big country right here is Belarus, and Russia has basically lined up soldiers all the way around this border. So there's no way to sort of, make a button hook in. This region right here is almost completely controlled by the Russians, especially the border zones. And this region right here is, of course, the initial invasion route. Now, right around in here, they potentially could, but that would be a suicide mission. They also don't have a lot of long-range missiles that would be capable of getting to Russia in order to hit a target, like if they were going to try to blow up Moscow or something like that. The Russian air defense is actually fairly capable, mostly because of the Cold War buildup and all of that stuff, trying to shoot down ICBMs with nuclear warheads. But so they don't have the munitions to make an attack of any decent size, and even if they did have planes that could carry bombs into Moscow, the Russian Air Force would shoot them down well before they got within striking distance of any significant Russian city. So what they have been able to do is some small-scale stuff where they've sneaked a couple of low-flying helicopters over to hit some oil reserves, and they've done a couple of things just barely over the border with drone stuff, which has caused Russia a lot of consternation. But the technological differences and the manpower differences are the biggest issues. They don't have the capacity to properly make an attack that would hit at a strategic target within Russia, which is kind of a crappy situation. Anyway, back to Germany. So the Potsdam Agreement gives us this. So this is divided Germany. And we see here West Germany and East Germany. And here we have Berlin. We have East Berlin and West Berlin. So West Germany here, of course, is going to be under the aegis of the Allies, Britain, France, and America, as is this portion of West Berlin. But East Germany and East Berlin are going to be under the control of, well, basically Russia, but the Soviet Union, if you want to be specific. Now, the government that gets put in place is going to do a lot of things very differently, but East Germany is going to get a little bit of a different treatment. A lot of the nations that had fallen under the Soviet banner were pretty poorly treated, right? Not saying that East Germany wasn't, but East Germany was allowed to retain a little bit more of its own cultural flavor. For example, even though they were ostensibly this kind of communist nation, the bourgeoisie upper class was still allowed to carry on and have luxury items and live in big houses and stuff like that. And notably, the Protestant church was still allowed to function. Now, our Protestant churches, but the big ones were still allowed to operate. Of course, communism, ideally in communist world, would not have religion or big religious operations, but these guys were treated a little bit differently. Aegis is a great word. What's up, Tad? Yeah, it's such a great word. It's a great word. I appreciate it. Also, how's it going? Good to see you. Old 122. Oh man, the Stasi was down bad. Oh yeah, they were really, really bad. We're doing the groundwork right now, but we're about to get to 1950 when they're founded, and things are going to go haywire. Also, welcome in. Good to see you. Hope you're having a good one. Feel free to chat and communicate at whatever level is comfortable with you. Like Hong Kong, kind of, but Hong Kong was, for a very, very long period of time, independently ruled by Britain. But I guess if you're asking if Britain allowed Hong Kong to do a lot of things in its traditional way, yes. Oh, you're in Germany. Oh, cool. So we just got through talking about the Potsdam Agreement. We showed our map. And it's time for our German governments to start doing some elections. If I could spell. And the guy that gets elected president is this guy named Wilhelm Pieck, who is this guy. Happy to hear about this time period because you were never taught any of this in school. Yeah, see, I really like hearing that because this is sort of the mission of my whole channel. World history means learning about everything, right? Not just what Western civilization thinks should be in a textbook in high school, right? So that's why we're covering all of the stuff. Pieck here is, or was rather, a longtime socialist, and he had been exiled to Russia during World War II because he was a socialist, and, well, he was particularly a communist. And when he first got elected, it looked kind of like the president was going to have at least a moderate amount of power. And that didn't last too terribly long because mostly the work of this guy, a guy named Walter Ulbricht, who is this guy. Now, you might have been thinking of Taiwan, not Hong Kong. Oh, yeah. Okay, so, yeah, like 2 countries, 1 government. Yeah. I'm with you. That's a lot more akin to the situation between East Germany and Russia. So Ulbricht is going to take over around the late 40s as the secretary of the Socialist Party. And this is going to also get him elected into a couple of different government positions. And he's pretty quickly going to become basically the shot caller. And he's going to be the guy that pretty much sets up the way that the East German government is going to function. And he's going to be the guy that oversees the creation of the Stasi. Ooh, that went kind of awry here. So let me clean up my notes here for just a second. We'll get rid of all of this, and we'll just leave Ulbricht here, and then we'll bring in the Stasi. Now, who were the Stasi, and what was the point of the Stasi, and what's the function within the government of the Stasi? Well, here's the thing. So, originally, this was part of the Secretary of State's office. Let me get my notes back in order. I just keep moving stuff around here. Come on. There we go. So they're formed in 1950, and they're part of the Secretary of State's office, but pretty quickly Ulbricht recognizes that they have an opportunity to use this organ of the state in a much more, and this is going to be kind of rough, direct and hands-on way. And the Stasi initially was supposed to be sort of like a state-run political / military group, but when Ulbricht starts really changing the way that East Germany is going to operate and starts implementing a lot of these communist ideas, the Stasi are going to become almost indispensable for him. So one of the things that Ulbricht does almost right off the bat is start nationalizing industry. So the government of East Germany is going to start taking over industrial capacity. And by the time we get to the early 50s, they have about 75% control of the German industry. So this is government-run industry. They're taking this away out of private hands, and they're running it by the government. And one thing to remember is if the government is owning 75% of the industry, that puts them as one of the highest job makers. And if you want a job, and you want a good job, you're going to end up working in a government job. And to be in a government job under Ulbricht and under, this particular communist East German rule, you're going to have to be in good with the party. And as the party head or the secretary of the party, this is where he gets a lot of his power from, because he can sort of kick you out of the party. And this is almost like, it's not exactly the same, but it's almost like the threat of communist excommunication, right? If you get kicked out of the party, you are blacklisted and you have no hope. Also, Ulbricht is going to start using the early versions of the Stasi to investigate his own people. And this is going to become one of the more important functions of the Stasi, which is to try to see who's actually doing what they're supposed to do. Who's towing the line? Who is doing what they're told, or who is just pretending and then going home and griping about it, right? But the loyal opposition, right? And a member of the club, guess you got no job. Correct. That's very, very accurate. So the government officials that don't line up behind Ulbricht and his plans are going to end up getting punished. We're being visited by a puppy. Would you all like to see a puppy? Hey, Katie Poo. You come see me? Come here. Come here. Come and see me. Oh, come here. You gotta stretch first. Come here. Come on. Come on. There you go. There's a puppy. Hey. What you sniffing? You okay? the puppy has had a rough couple of days. She does not do well with fireworks, and she had a very upset stomach this morning, potentially due to having a bone as a treat, which we don't usually let her have at the size that she had a pretty big bone, and then having to go through all of the fireworks, which they were still shooting today. People shot fireworks in my neighborhood all day today during the day. It was ridiculous. East German red, white, and blue scare. Sort of. Yeah. Right. So yesterday was the 4th of July, which is Independence Day in the United States. Also David Peterson's birthday. So what ends up happening as a result of all of these policies and nationalization is that people start leaving East Germany. And specifically, the people that are leaving are the educated, white-collar, government, technological kind of jobs. These people that can go to other parts of Europe, specifically to like West Germany, and get way better treatment and way better jobs. And this is going to begin causing a pinch on the East German economy. And this is where the quotas are going to start kicking in, right? The good thing about communism, if you're a communist, is the government can demand a certain amount of production because they own the means of production. And they can go, we want this quota. And the quotas are going to start going really high up, because one of the things that at this point Stalin was really pushing was this concept of you have to become my military and industrial exporter. Like, we want East Germany to be sort of the crown jewel of our larger European industrial network, and also you owe us money. And see, here's a weird little twist of this whole situation. Stalin forced East Germany to pay war reparations. And that seems kind of odd, considering Stalin was basically running East Germany in the first place. So in order to meet the demand of the exports that they were expected to do, and to meet part of their reparation requirements, you got to just produce more, right? And then only the phone sanitation engineer, right? Pretty much. So when these quotas go up really high, there is actually violence. There's something in 1953, it's called the 1953 Uprising, where a bunch of union workers in a couple of cities decided that they were going to try to basically not follow these quotas. And the response was the Soviets rolled in the tanks and put down the 53 riot really, really heavily. And after this, the bickering inside of East Germany became pretty bad. And once there might have been hope for an ability to push back against this government, some people were like, maybe we can get better treatment, maybe we can do okay, maybe we can be all right. But then when it was clear that the Russians weren't going to tolerate this kind of stuff, then it became, we hate these guys, and we want to do whatever we can to get away from these guys. And this is going to increase people leaving East Germany, and this is going to increase the need of Ulbricht to watch his own people. This is where the Stasi gets spun off into their own individual sort of functioning body. So they're going to get removed from the Department of State and turned into their own standalone organization. And they get put under the direction of this guy named Milke. Let me type his name here. Well, let me just get rid of that because we've got that up there. So this guy right here is Erich Mielke. And he is going to get put in charge of the Stasi in 1957 when they get spun off into their own unit or their own sort of governmental body. And what's really interesting here is that Ulbricht basically gives this guy free rein. He pretty much says that you can do whatever you need to do to keep the state in line. And there weren't even really like reports to the government. You know, so like in America, or I'm sure in many countries that you're part of, like the intelligence agencies are expected to go into like Parliament or Congress once every so often and give reports, and they're supposed to submit information to Parliament or Congress upon request. Ulbricht didn't give any such direction to Mielke. He basically said, we're potentially going to meet a few times, but what I'm mostly interested in is the work that you're doing outside, because the Stasi was also an external spy network, similar to the CIA or MI6 or whatever, you know, the KGB. And that's worth talking about almost on its own, but because the specific request was about the way that they ran the police state within East Germany, we're mostly going to focus tonight on what they were doing inside of East Germany, and that is really and honestly kind of whatever they wanted to. And one of the first problems that they were charged with tackling, the Beast Raban School of Management. This dude is very much like Raban Harkonnen. He really is a monster. And it's not hard for me to say that at all. Do many other countries separate their internal and external agencies? Ours, yeah, so theoretically ours is separated. We have the FBI for internal, and we have the CIA for external. But then we have the NSA, which kind of does whatever it wants to. And we have a whole bunch of other intelligence agencies that are smaller and part of other groups. And theoretically, they're all supposed to work together, but they really do like to draw lines between themselves. And other countries do that a little bit differently. But usually, in Western countries, there's going to be some, at least, like tip of the hat to the idea that this is the homeland kind of thing, and this is the abroad kind of thing. Now, whether or not that line is deeply etched or just sort of more informal varies by country. Yeah, so ours is kind of a mess, and yeah, especially since 2000 and the 2001 attacks there, and the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, that has gone even further into muddling, because then we also have like military intelligence. We have Army intelligence and Navy intelligence and Air Force intelligence and all of these different intelligence agencies. And again, theoretically, they're all working for, Congress or the president, one or the other, but they don't really share information as well as they need to. But that's an opinion hat topic for for another stream, because the American intelligence agencies are sometimes not very intelligent. What's up, Jay Axer? How's it going, man? Good to see you. If you all do not know my buddy Jay, you got to go give this guy a follow. Jay's a great artist, a really cool guy, very generous with his time on his stream, talking about why he's doing stuff and explaining stuff. And it's good to see you, Jay. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you and Cammy are having a good one. So, Milka's kind of like turned loose. And the first problem that they have to tackle is this immigration problem. By the time that we get to 1960, right? So in 1957, they get spun off as their own state organ that's sort of under its own direction. Um, if we just go to 3 years ahead of time, the immigration problem in Germany was just remarkably huge. I don't know how to explain this other than by basically using kind of raw numbers. Uh, from the beginning of East Germany's existence in 46 to 60, so that span of time, that's, what is that, like 14 years? They had lost 20% of their population to immigration, people leaving the country. That's astronomical, right? That's just crazy amounts of people just leaving the country. But I mean, honestly, can we blame these people? And overwhelmingly, the people that were leaving were, again, the educated, the ones that were capable of finding jobs in other countries, the white collar people that were bringing with them not just their skills but also their money. And this was creating a serious problem inside of East Germany. And this was a larger problem in the in the Eastern Warsaw Pact countries. And they gave it the name the brain drain, right? So like our intelligent people that can get out are getting out, and it's just draining our ability to function stuff. And Ulbricht is actually going to have some disagreements about this stuff. And it's going to be pretty rough. And the guy that he's fighting with is mostly this guy. This is Nikita Khrushchev. American government agencies have a pathological hatred of sharing really, really critical information with each other. That is accurate. But if you die in West Germany, you die in real life, pretty much. So Nikita Khrushchev had taken over Russia by this point. And Khrushchev was very much not Stalin. He had a very different style of leadership. Khrushchev had tried, at least initially under his term of rule, to be a little bit less brutal than Stalin. And unfortunately for the way that Ulbricht was looking at East Germany, Khrushchev was part of the problem. Because Khrushchev's lenient policies were allowing people out of East Europe and going to Western Europe. And Ulbricht says, we've got to put a stop to this. And Khrushchev was sort of hemming and hawing about that. And effectively, after some problems that are happening in places like Czechoslovakia, Khrushchev sort of agrees to let Ulbricht a little bit more latitude to handle the problem how he wants to. And this, of course, leads us to 1961 and the creation of the Berlin Wall. So the Berlin Wall, of course, separated the East German and West German portions of Berlin. So the free part of Berlin that was administered by the Europeans and the Americans, and the part of Berlin that was really sort of locked down under the communist state for many, many years. If you could get to West Berlin, you could get on an Allied plane and fly somewhere else, like to West Germany. But let us remember that West Berlin itself was kind of an island here surrounded by the larger East German state. So if you could get over to the Allied part of Berlin, they could then get you out to other parts of Germany or other parts of Europe, or even to America, depending on if you were a secret Nazi, rocket scientist. Was there a metaphorical carrot to match the stick that is the Berlin Wall? No, it was just a stick and another stick. And this is pretty brutal stuff. So the Berlin Wall itself just separates the parts of Berlin, but that's not all that was there. The East German government oversaw the construction of 830 miles of border patrol zones. And these were sometimes physical walls, sometimes really high barbed wire fences that had machine gun nests along them, that had snipers' roosts along them. And Ulbricht puts in place something sort of, well, it's not necessarily famous, more infamous, that's called the Order to Fire policy. There were East German military and Stasi and political officers along this border, and if you saw somebody trying to cross the border, you did not have the option to fire, you were ordered to fire. And he sort of said, this is a blanket statement. You are ordered to fire at these people. You are not to let them out. You are not to use your best discretion. You are just supposed to shoot them. Did the West build or guard any part of the Berlin Wall? There were checkpoints where you could cross from the East Berlin side to the West Berlin side, but they were not administered by the Americans or the West. They were all under the guise of being run by the East. Now, of course, there were American soldiers there, or, you know, British soldiers there, or French soldiers there, but that was mostly because the East Germans had concentrated, military power there as well. So you don't want to just necessarily leave this, what you might call, undefended. You got to have guys there in case they decide to do something stupid like try to invade. But it's not being run by the West. The East is running the wall and this big border zone. There were tanks and machine guns and landmines. One of the things that they did along the border zone was make a whole bunch of landmine fields. Another thing that they would do is go through with big tillers, discs and tillers on behind tractors, and they would till up these big stretches of dirt along the border zone, and they would keep it very, very loose so that in the mornings when the sun came up, they would drive down these big stretches of dirt, and they would see if there were footprints to see if anybody had crossed across the border zone, so that they could post guards to make it harder for people to develop pathways to get out of East Germany. They're really thorough about this stuff. Really, really thorough. It's crazy how far they went to try to keep people inside East Germany. So once you have the population locked down and they can't get out, then you have to start replacing what you were missing. And this is something that the Stasi took direct part in. This concept of increasing the technological prowess of young people, right? Let's find smart people that are in school. Here, even sometimes, like high grades of elementary or low grades of high school that are showing high levels of aptitude, and let's make sure that they get into fields that are heavy in technology, specifically here, all of the stuff that you might need to run spy networks, computers. Let's get them into electronics. Let's get them into data or math or code cracking. And let's follow them through their high school careers. And as soon as they get out and they want to go find a job, let's just snap them up and bring them right into the Stasi. And what this does is begins an exponential growth in one of the most dense per capita spy populations that has ever existed on Earth. By the time that the Stasi hits its height, it has 85,000 spies. And that's for, a population that's, in the single digit millions. They had 102,000 total employees, But even beyond that, their network of informants was almost 200,000 people. So inside of East Germany, you had about 100,000 people that were directly working for the Stasi. And then you had about another 200,000, it's about 170, 175,000 people that were informants for the Stasi. So you've got almost 300,000 people that are watching you and will tell on you or will throw you in jail. And this is an enormous expansion of surveillance. If you love something, never set it free. That way it can love that thing for all of eternity, right? You just never let it go. Not if I tell them first. Yeah, right. And that's sort of what it becomes. There's this constant fear that you're being watched. And honestly, you were kind of being watched. Everybody was being watched. What's up, Grow Forest? Good to see you. And when you have all of these, you end up needing places to put the people that they are watching, right? So you have these big expansions of prisons. It's a shame. What's up, Kyle? Good to see you. You ate all of those turkey cookies. All of them, right? They're good, aren't they? They're really good. Those are my favorite Turkish snack. For those of you that don't know, Kyle is an IRL friend of mine, and I met up with him at Heroes Con last week. Was it last week? 2 weekends ago now. And I had brought a little sort of care package from him, from Turkey, back for him because he had very generously donated to help me fund the trip. So among that was some of my favorite Turkish cookies called kremalis, and they're like heaven in a little bite. A chilling effect, yes. Prisons, what are those like? A shame that we don't have any of those here in the land of the free. Oh, foggage. They're actually like this. This particular one is kind of like the worst place to go. This is Brandenburg Gordon Prison. You did not want to go here. This is the place where you don't come out. This is the place where you get tortured until you die, and then they pretend that you didn't exist. So this is like Milka's back pocket, and you don't want to go there. It is a bad, bad place. We don't even really know how many people they killed in there, because they disappeared people, right? We do know that the population of people in prison skyrocketed under the Stasi's, sort of reign of terror here. But we don't know how many people ended up there. It's in the tens of thousands of people that got arrested, right? It's the response goal achieved, right? Now, how did the Stasi actually do all of this stuff? We've talked a lot about how they got into power, but now that they are in power, what are they doing? What are they actually doing? Well, again, there's not government oversight under Ulbricht, who's, again, the guy that's sort of running East Germany at this point. Mielke is the guy that's the head of the Stasi. Ulbricht is the secretary of the party and sort of running the political game. But what are they doing? Well, constant surveillance. There are people in every aspect of life that were on the take from the Stasi. There were people in churches. One of the goals of Mielke was to have at least one informant in every single apartment building in East Germany. At least one. And these people would be listening to stuff like who's arguing with their wife, who's arguing with their kid, who doesn't like their job. Any bits of information that might be useful as leverage against somebody gets reported and gets cataloged, and everybody has a file on them. So you're being surveilled in your church, at your house, you're being surveilled at work. A lot of the people that worked, remember, worked at jobs that were government jobs. They had people that would be informants at bars, right? People that were bartending. You know, everybody wants to talk to the bartender, right? So go get the bartender on the Stasi take, and every time the bartender hears something scandalous or chicanerous or deplorable, just go report them, right? They had people that would walk around public parks, right? Their job was literally just walk around the park, and whatever you hear, you just write it down. They even had people that were in prison that were informants on other people in prison. They're watching you everywhere. If only the Stasi had Facebook. Holy crap. They kind of did have Facebook effect because they were in basically every facet of someone's life. Once all the Stasi and Soviet stuff ended, you could go and request the file on yourself, right? You could if they didn't shred it. Because one of the things that happens, and this is sort of a spoiler for the end of the stream, is that when they realized that they were done for, they tried to destroy everything. And they managed to get some of it destroyed. It was a monumental task to try to accomplish, though. Informants in prison, isn't that common? Do you mean that they weren't actually prisoners? They were either people that were purposefully put in prison to act as informants, or they were prisoners who they had turned informant once they got into prison. They didn't really care. As long as you cooperated and told them stuff, they didn't really care how you got there. Yeah. Any activity that you did was potentially suspect. This is what I'm trying to get at. Like, they were watching everything. They're going to start expanding censorship. One of the ways that they sort of did their censorship was by passing these sort of vague and not particularly specifically worded laws about censorship that said stuff like nothing that demeans the state. Well, what does that mean? How do I interpret demeans the state? Well, and the answer is, remember, they're not really acting under anybody's direction. So if any particular Stasi officer decided that's demeaning to the state, you could get arrested for that. And most of the time, the sort of middle managers of the Stasi didn't really care as long as people were getting arrested and as long as information was coming through. So these low-level ground, sort of door-to-door Stasi officers could arrest anybody that they wanted to as long as it didn't cause big enough waves. But if you were a nobody that wasn't connected, you better be real careful about what you're talking about, or you're going to get stuck with charges, right? So specifically here, media, all versions of print media, so books, poetry, plays, newspapers, all of that was under constant levels of censorship. Even works of art, you couldn't paint things that showed, for example, like the German emperors in good light. Specifically, like none of the Hohenzollerns, like Wilhelm I or Wilhelm II. Is that not why you are here? Aristotle, it's good to see you, man. Again with the raid. So generous with the raids lately, my friend. I hope everybody in here is already following Aristotle. If you're not, go give this guy a follow. He's a great guy. He's incredibly intelligent. He's very kind. And he's not just intelligent, he's wise, right? So there's a reason your D&D statistics sheet has wisdom and intelligence as two different statistics, right? So you got to have both of them to really be able to get there. And this guy has both of them. And he talks about philosophy and life and the problems of life on his stream. You got to go check this guy out. He's a good dude. You flatter me, and I love it. I hope you're feeling better. He's kind of getting over COVID. Or still kind of getting over COVID. I hope you're feeling better. I was actually just talking with my wife about you earlier, about your move, and hoping that your move is going well, and want to re-extend that offer that I made on your stream about moving. Bum ba-dum bum, bum ba-dum bum bum. Animal Chin, thank you so much for that follow, and welcome to the adventure. For those of you that don't know who I am, coming in with Eris's Raid, my name is Shane. I teach college, history and sociology at college here where I live in the Deep South. And my stream is all about history. And tonight we're doing a viewer request stream, which is viewer request number 59, almost 60. And we're talking about the Stasi, who were the East German secret police folk that were really friggin' horrible and did a whole bunch of stuff to just mess with people. So we are sort of, we did some groundwork about how they got all set up by the government and all that stuff, and now we're kind of talking about how they started messing with people's brains. Yeah, no, it's great. I love that. We're going to do number 60 next week. Bum ba dum. Dun 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 dun. Calcor, thank you so much for that follow. And welcome to the adventure. I hope everybody is comfortable. You can participate in whatever level of conversation you want to in the chat. You can ask me whatever you want to. It doesn't have to be on topic. I love chasing rabbits and going off on tangents. We kind of have a semi-organized discussion about one topic, but we'll end up talking about something else by the end of the night. We've already talked about World War II battle tactics and Ghost of Tsushima and people shooting fireworks and scaring my dog. So we'll talk about lots of stuff over the course of the stream. Coughing a bit, but still feeling like 95%. Hey man, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad you're getting back on your feet. I hope you're doing okay. So seriously, everybody go follow Eris. So okay, we've got the Stasi, which is the main topic, and below us you see the named Ulbricht, which is this guy. Ulbricht is was rather, because he's dead now. He was the guy that was running East Germany at the time. And then we have this guy, Mielke, who was the head of the Stasi. So just putting faces with the names that you see here on your screen. And we're kind of talking about how pervasive the Stasi's reach went. And it was really all over the place. So there was high levels of censorship. It was in all sorts of stuff. Movies, plays, radio, newspapers, television. Everything was under their guise, right? You can't do anything that they thought was damaging or harmful or troublesome or critical. And they had a really broad range of ability to interpret that. Is it safe to say a large percentage of informants had to have taken pride in their snooping and felt a purpose / fulfilled with their ability to gather banal information on others? Forrest, that's a fair assessment for some of the people, but one of the things that the Stasi really liked doing was blackmailing people. They would find somebody that was an informant to give them just a little piece of dirt on you, and they would then approach you and say, we have this on you. Now you're going to tell us everything that you know about all of these other people. And what's really sort of disturbing about the way that the Stasi operated is that we have recordings from when a lot of these officers went on trial after the fall of the Cold War. And they would joke about how easy it was to flip people, right? Like they would have a photo of a guy with his mistress and go, tell us everything you know about your boss, or we're going to give your wife this photo. and they laughed about how easy it was to get people to spill the beans on their neighbors. Because the whole country was under surveillance and everybody knew that everybody was watching you. So people just kind of rolled over. I'm sure that some people felt some sense of like sick pride at being the tattletale, but I don't know if we could say that was a fair assessment for the majority of people. A large percentage we could probably debate about. It's hard to give, specifics, but it was a threat state, right? Like you did what you were told to do, or you got outed or ratted on or flipped or dropped from your job or, put on paid or non-paid leave or something like that. But what's really, really messed up is this particular tactic that they used. It's called Zersetung. Now, literally, if we translate this from German into English, this means decomposition. But, man, this sounds horrible to even talk about. In the early days of the Stasi, they were very, very violent. And the violence didn't ever really go away. They could beat you in public. They could, drag you off after beating you in public. But they found out that it was more effective to psychologically damage people, to break their minds, than it was to beat people and break their bodies. So they developed this tactic or technique of Zersetung to literally decompose people's mental stability. And they would do some really trippy crap. They would go into your house while you were away at work and rearrange the clothes in your closet. And that's all they would do. And then they would wait a week and they would go in your house and they would slightly move your furniture around. And that's all that they would do. Or I read this one thing where they would go into your house and they would change the brand of food, right? Like one of them's like this guy had a box of tea, right? Like you go get Lipton tea, right? Steal one of all of their socks, or like change one of their socks. Did I spell it wrong? It's quite possible that I spelled this wrong because I'm not that great at German. No, I think I got it right. Zersitz. No, I'm missing a Z. Zersitzung. There we go. Yeah, I am missing a Z. There we go. So, like, they would go and open the box of tea and take all the tea bags out and put tea bags of a different brand in that tea box and then put it back in the cabinet. Or they would do stuff like go and just take the phone off of the hook. They would break into your house and just take the phone off of the hook. And they would do this like once or twice a week to people for months just to screw with their heads, right? So imagine having your house broken into. I hope that you all have never had that experience, but imagine having your house broken into, right? And imagine that feeling of someone else being in your safe spot. And then imagine that you know that they were in there and you know that they're doing this just to screw with you, and you don't know when they're going to do it again or what they're going to do next. And then stuff like, imagine your spouse putting something back in a different spot, right? Like, honey, where's the so-and-so? And then you go, was that the Stasi? Did they move my scissors? Did they take the scissors out of this drawer and put it in that drawer just to screw with me? It's messed up. It's messed up. This is just totally jacked up. And when people would go and try to file reports like, why are you surveilling me? Why are you, why are you doing this to me? The Stasi would go, we're not doing anything to you. Did you just move that yourself? You probably just moved that yourself. And they would gaslight the heck out of people. Also, Green Herring, good to see you. I recognize you from Dr. WD-40's stream, and I saw that you followed a couple of days ago, so thanks for that follow. I appreciate it. Feel free to participate at whatever level you are comfortable with. We can do this. You can't stop us. Exactly. That's exactly what it was. Exactly what it was. It was purely to make you recognize that you had no power in this situation. They would also do stuff like arrest you in public, they would wait until you were stuff like at church, and they would go arrest you at church. Or they would wait until you were at your kid's wedding, and they would go arrest you at your kid's wedding. Why would we change your tea is really different. Exactly. It's just it's the deviousness of minor infraction. Like, how do you it's so horrible. I don't even want to imagine how bad this must have been. They would arrest you in really, really public spaces. They would beat people for no reason, right? If you were caught saying something, they would just beat the crap out of you. You got thrown in jail for an undisclosed amount of time for undisclosed reasons, and if you did have a trial, maybe it was a show trial, that took 30 minutes to do. It reminds me a bit of Pratchett's Anti-Crimes, but less wholesome, right? How do I sign up for this job of ultimate prankster? You have to be willing to torment other people and give up your soul. I don't understand how people did this unless they were sociopathic. Now, one of the things that I discovered in research for this particular stream, I knew the Stasi were bad. I did not know how bad that they were. In particular, one of the things that they did that has been coming to light even a little bit more recently, but especially in the early 2000s, is that they would abduct children. So if you were deemed unfit parents, the Stasi would figure out a way to abduct your kid. Like, let's say you took your kid to the doctor, right? Regular doctor checkup. The doctor says, oh, we need to do some tests on your kid. You can wait right here. We'll bring your kid to the back. And when we're done, we'll bring him back out. And then they would come up and say, your kid died. Sorry, in the middle of the test, your kid died. And there's nothing we can do about it. Unfortunately, we can't release the body to you right now. As soon as we can, we'll let you have a funeral. And they'd have a closed casket funeral, and parents were never allowed to view the body of their kid because their kid had been abducted and was being raised by people that were deemed fit. And it's horrible stuff. It's just absolutely horrible stuff. Now, what's up, JMR? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. All right, so things are going pretty badly until they get a little bit worse. Now, this guy is Erich Honecker. And Honecker is going to take over in 71. Ulbricht had been getting old and having some health issues and was basically forced out by a combination of Russian and East German power. So Ulbricht is going to be basically forcibly retired, and Erich Honecker is going to take over in 71 as the leader of the party, the secretary of the party, aka basically the head politician and head political leader of East Germany. Now, around this same time, Russia had. Oops, sorry, wrong way. Did I? Nope. What's going on here? This guy. This guy shows up in Russia. This guy is Brezhnev, Leonid Brezhnev. So he becomes the leader of Russia after Khrushchev gets pushed out. And Brezhnev kind of wanted to go back to the good old policies of Stalin. And Honecker was not really okay with that. So Honecker liked the idea of cracking down on people, but Honecker wanted East Germany to be more independent. And Brezhnev was like, no, we are all unified, and you will now do what I tell you to do. And Honecker and Brezhnev don't necessarily get along very well, but Honecker is going to be a hardliner. And he actually does begin direct oversight of the Stasi. Milka is still in charge of the Stasi, by the way, and is sort of he's the leader all the way up until 1989. And Milka and Honecker start having frequent meetings, and you go, oh, well, good. This is going to like rein in the Stasi, and they're not going to be so bad. No. The reason they're having meetings is because Honecker wants to be more invasive. He wants to be more all in, and he wants to make sure that he gets to say more about how the Stasi do the junk that they're doing. And basically, under the combined oversight of Honecker and Milka, the Stasi basically become legal criminals. They have no repercussions at all anymore. If they want to rob somebody, they go rob somebody. If they want to extort somebody, they extort them. If they want to burn down a building, they do it. If they want to kill somebody, they just go kill them. And they justify all of this under the larger umbrella of state security. And it doesn't have anything to do with state security. If you have a petty gripe against your neighbor and you're in the Stasi, just go kill him and say, state security, he was a threat. If you want to kick your friend out of their house because you want to live in their house, throw them in jail and take their house over and say, state security. They can do whatever they want to now. Like, they were bad before, but they are literally without any sort of jurisdiction. They can literally just do whatever they want to. If they wanted to kidnap your kids, just take them off the street. They could do whatever they wanted to. And this is going to be like the worst period of time. From the beginning of the 70s to the end of the 70s, arrests go up, show trials go through the roof, and Milka is going to start working on something that he called Plan X. And when I describe this to you, it's going to sound like some like Dr. Evil horrible thing, because it's just ridiculous in its scope. Milka wanted to have a total list of everybody that he suspected as not towing the line. And he had this giant list made, and it's almost 86,000 people. And he starts tasking his officers to create plans to be able to arrest all 86,000 of these people in one big swoop. Like, he wanted them to go figure out where the doorbells were on their apartments so that they knew how to get in faster to be able to arrest these people. And this is ridiculously detailed. And anybody that's on one of these lists is potentially part of this Plan X thing that Milka is working on in the background. Now, the 70s go okay for Brezhnev, but the 80s, not so much. Especially the early 80s go pretty bad for Brezhnev, and we end up with this guy. This guy is Gorbachev. Gorbachev takes over in Russia, and he does not care for Honecker at all. They do not agree. And Gorbachev, when he's running Russia, starts trying to turn Russia a little bit away from the hardline communist stance, right? Like, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. Weird that there's a color photo associated with that name. Well, we had a color of Honecker as well. So this is, yeah, we're getting a little bit closer. Anyway, Gorbachev's concept of backing off, calming down, and rearranging doesn't sit well with Honecker, because Honecker is like, no, I just got the people terrified to the point that I want them to be. And Gorbachev was like, you gotta back off. And Honecker's like, not gonna, make me. And this is sort of the beginning of the end of the Stasi. Because when the people inside of East Germany are seeing what happens in Russia proper, they go, wait a second, they're having it better than we are. We need change too. And Honecker is like, shut the heck up, go back to work, increase the quotas. And this is going to trigger significant public protests. And Honecker goes to Milka and goes, stop the protests. And Milka's like, gotcha. And within the Stasi, Milka creates specialized anti-riot groups. And these are basically thugs with sticks and guns. And their job is, when there is a protest, you send these guys in their armor and their shields, and they get rid of the protest one way or the other, including killing people, beating people, arresting people, disappearing people. And this actually makes it worse, because it turns out that people prefer to live in freedom and outside of fear than under fear. And this is going to be basically an unassailable threat to Honecker. And Milka himself is actually going to realize that things are changing too fast. When the anti-riot groups actually aren't enough to keep people from rioting, Milka actually starts working behind the scenes to sell Honecker out. How ironic that the head of the Stasi is going to sell somebody out, right? For his own promotion. It doesn't end up helping. Milka ends up spending the rest of his life under surveillance and in prison. But Honecker ends up getting forced out. Right at the beginning of the big protests, were there rioters 30 years earlier? The last big uprising was in 1953. And that was met by Soviet tanks and military, and that had really been the last sizable protest for, what is it now? We're in the 85 range, so about 32 years. Yeah, it had been a generation almost since people had protested in big numbers like this. It's kind of crazy. These people had grown up under the surveillance state. So Milka abandons Honecker. Honecker gets pushed out, and then in 1989 we get this. It's a very, very famous photo that was in National Geographic of mostly young people in East Germany climbing up on the Berlin Wall. And of course, not too long after this photo is taken, they tear the wall down. And this is actually one of the first really big moments of significant world history that I remember. I remember watching this on TV, and I asked my mom, because we were watching. I would guess it was probably Tom Brokaw, the nightly news, right? And there were people with sledgehammers that were just attacking this wall. And I asked my mom, because I was 6 at the time, or maybe even 5, about to turn 6. And I said, "Why are they so mad at the wall?" Why are they so angry at this wall? And she tried to explain, this was built to keep these groups of people apart, and the people that are tearing it down didn't want to be kept apart from the other people because they weren't allowed to do what they wanted to. And even as a little kid, but how do you explain that to a 5-year-old? And I was a pretty precocious kid, and I was pretty quick on the uptake. But how do you explain, well, son, back in 1945 at Potsdam, Stalin ended up taking over all of Eastern Europe. You launch into the discussion that we've had tonight, right? But that was a really interesting moment to live through, and I distinctly remember watching them do that stuff. Wall bad, bridge good, right? Imagine if you had the stream back then. It would have been like Shane does the news. Right? Okay, so the wall comes down in 89, and the Stasi freak the heck out, because at this point they know that their days are numbered. And what do? Well, the first thing that they try to do is destroy all of the evidence. And it's hard to do that when you have as much evidence as the Stasi had. Probably billions of pages of documents. Yeah, Stasi's mom. Stasi's mom's got it going on. What's up, Shiggy? I try to make bad song puns with all of my stream titles, right? Sometimes it's movie quote puns. Sometimes it's just idiom puns. You came late. How was the economy around the time for East Germany? Communist and not doing so great. Communist and not doing so great. They were, of all of the Soviet Union countries, one of the better ones. They were in the sort of top 10% of Soviet Union countries. But let's remember that Soviet Union countries weren't doing that great as a baseline, right? They had luxury items. They still had some social classes. But I would not have wanted to live there. This would not be a time that I would choose to go back to live in. It's pretty bad. What would a successful East Germany, have looked like, even if things had gone well for the Soviet dream? If the Soviet Union hadn't fallen, what would they look like now? Oh, that's a hard question to answer. Probably like North Korea. That's about the closest analog that I can think of. With the level of surveillance and control, it would have been bad. Oh, okay. Not hadn't fallen, more had worked well. as in if they hadn't been such jerks. They would have been probably a moderately successful Eastern European country. They were small in comparison to some of the other countries. They had a decent sized population after they shut everybody down leaving. They had the capacity to do a lot of stuff agriculturally on their own. For industrial capacity, they were pretty reliant on imports for a lot of raw materials, though. They would have been okay. Like if I would have probably let me throw my borders up here, and I'll try to maybe give them an analog. They would probably have been about as successful as maybe, I don't know, maybe a Czechoslovakia or Czech Republic. I don't know. That's hard to say. Because basically East Germany was kind of, well, you can't see it because I don't have it set right. Kind of like this chunk right here, right? Germany as a country would not be as powerful as it is today. West Germany would have been by far the more successful of the two. East Germany would probably still be something along the lines of maybe a Hungary or a Czechia, a country that is sufficient, capable of producing things with stable borders and a fairly decent sized economy, but not anything necessarily very powerful. So yeah, well, I mean that's kind of the same. Like if you don't know whether or not the Czech Republic is successful, that's probably about the same as East Germany would have been. They're not one of the. They probably would not have been one of the major producers in Europe. They probably would not have been one of the major players in the European Union political structure. I don't think that they would have been. And I say this like not against the East German people. They lived through a crap ton of stuff, but I don't know if they would have been as successful apart as Germany is today together. Because they just didn't have the same amount of stuff. The reparations that Russia took from East Germany effectively stripped them of their natural resources for decades. They would be way behind the ball. They would be more alike to Eastern European countries than Western European countries in scale of economy and exports and things like that. How would West Berlin fit in that picture? The West would have probably abandoned Berlin. If East Germany was going to stick around, they would have moved their capital, probably to Frankfurt, maybe Munich. Probably Frankfurt, though. Yeah, I would probably guess Frankfurt. Germany is two separate countries. It's weird to chat to Europeans who would prefer that the U.S. were balkanized. That's a messy situation to walk into. The U.S. doesn't split evenly you can split it in lots of different ways by different demographics, but any way that you split it among one demographic causes problems with other demographics. Like you can't split it economically because that would create massive racial issues. You can't split it racially because that would then create massive economic issues. You can't split it politically because that would create economic issues. And the United States doesn't split easily. It would be really hard to make multiple countries out of America that were viable. But don't tell that to Texas. All right. So the Stasi panic. They try to destroy everything. They don't manage to get everything destroyed. A lot of the stuff is maintained and then turned around to used against them. All the way up through the early 90s, these big Stasi leaders are put on trial, including political leaders like Honecker, who get put on trial. These people spend most of their lives, the rest of their lives, either in jail or under house arrest. They're forced to forfeit large portions of um, their fortunes and possessions, live in much smaller houses. A lot of these people spend decades in jail, so they get a lot of punishment. But I don't think that you could ever necessarily say that Milka was sufficiently punished. I don't know if we're doing pure reciprocity, right? So if we're looking at criminal justice as a reciprocal function of the state, whereby you have done something and our job is to reciprocate that sort of damage to you, I don't know if you could have ever done that without torturing the guy very, very slowly to death. And that, of course, is completely inhumane, and I'm not saying that they should have done that at all. But, I mean, spending 30 years in prison compared to what he did to all those people is... It's not an equitable exchange. We know that California can be its own country. If California were its own country, it would be the 5th largest economy in the world. Which is kind of crazy. If any state could do it, though, I don't know if California could. California is a lot more internally divided than people think it is. Everybody looks at California and goes, oh, that place is just full of the left, and they run the whole thing. The split in California is not as clear as it looks on paper. It's about 55-45. Let's not forget that within the last couple of, governors, they had a 2-term Republican governor under Arnold Schwarzenegger. So they're not incapable of electing Republicans there. They're not as uniform, monolithic, liberal as a lot of people think that they are. And especially not as bad as they get demonized to be. Economically, but it would die very quickly if it couldn't find alternate means of water. Yeah, because the Colorado River would be a big arguing spot. And a lot of the headwaters of those stuff that runs out of the Rockies would have really big stuff. It'd be messy. They should replace his T, right? So they can't do it. They need Texas power. Northern California is red. Very much so, Forrest. Very much. Like loud. Yes, exactly. Like loud, loud red. You would say Texifornia, but I think that would be sacrilege in either state. I don't think that they would get along either. I don't think you could functionally create a country out of those two states. I mean, they're not contiguous. You'd have to put in like Arizona and New Mexico, and that would throw everything out. It would be a weird mess. Which again is like it's hard to break the country up. Yeah, it does. It's exactly right. The electoral vote concept of winner take all electoral votes makes California look ridiculously blue. If you were to split electoral votes by percentage instead of winner take all, California would be much more in play. Actually, that's one of my suggestions for currently altering the Electoral College, is to force states to divvy up their electoral votes by percentage instead of winner take all. So there we go. All right. But that is the end of my stream for the Stasi. Doesn't electoral votes make a lot of the Midwestern states? Yes, that's true of a lot of states like Ohio and sometimes Pennsylvania, Illinois, Indiana. They look a lot redder than they actually are because of the the breakup there. I'm glad that it was a delightful stream. It's kind of hard to talk about some of this stuff because of just like the level of pernicious activity, just the level of absolute horror that these people inflicted on others. It's crazy stuff, man. It's really messy stuff. We'll see what happens. You think the Supreme Court is entertaining hearing a case on gerrymandering? I'm pretty sure they're going to hear it, and I don't know if that is particularly going to solve the electoral issue. The particular argument is one that has been answered in different ways in different federal circuits. The question is basically, can you gerrymander for political bias? And the issue is that it's hard to prove motive in political gerrymandering, because people that do political gerrymandering are pretty smart at how they do it. So it's pretty messy stuff. What's in the news? There's a lot of stuff in the news, unfortunately, which sometimes seems like it's a blessing and sometimes feels like it's a curse. World news, I don't know, like what's not... Okay, so I guess the big thing to talk about for me right now, one thing that I've been talking about a lot in the mod chat is Boris Johnson over in the UK. So the way that Parliament works is that if you survive a vote of no confidence, which Boris Johnson did rather handily, with not as big of a percentage as he would have liked, but rather handily, you have basically 365 days of immunity. They can't call you back up on a no confidence vote within that year. And as soon as he survived that vote, KP asked, what would it take for him to actually go? And I really came down to two scenarios. One of them is very highly unlikely. One of them is basically where the Queen demanded that he resign, which would put him in a really bad spot. Because the Queen, and to be fair, the nobility have not done something like that in a long time. And it would look really bad if he said no. It would also look really bad on the Queen if she demanded it. So it's a potential, but it's like a very, very low percentage chance. But the one thing that I said would kill Boris is if all of his cabinet started resigning. And last week he lost a cabinet member, and today he lost two more, including the Chancellor, which is like one of the highest. Chancellor of the Exchequer is basically like the Secretary of Treasury in Parliament. So it's pretty high. Boris Johnson is the guy from Borat, right? Pretty much. When did I say that? So the day he survived the no confidence vote, I was talking with KP and Mac in a lab coat in our... We've got a group chat on Facebook Messenger. That's the three of us. And I said that the two things that would kill him are either the Queen or him losing all of his cabinet ministers. And he's losing his cabinet ministers. And to top that off, additional scandal stuff has come out where he pretty clearly knew that some of the people he appointed to jobs were horrible people, including one of them that had done stuff like sexually assaulted people. And like he knew this and he had even joked about it. And then said, oh, no, I didn't joke about that. And then other people were like, you literally said this, and quoted him on it. And he was like, oh, I forgot. So things are not looking peachy keen for old Boris over in the UK right now. I don't think that he's done yet. But I do think that he is potentially on the way to being done. If he can't find people that are willing to take those jobs, he's going to be in real bad shape. You can't run a government without the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK. It just doesn't function the right way. And people, if and people can say, I don't want that job, right? They can refuse the job. They don't have to take it. Join California and Texas is joining the fray in this. Yeah, pretty much. And doesn't like Massachusetts or some state around there do it by percentage. So Maine. Maine splits their electoral votes 2-2, and Nebraska. Nebraska splits its electoral votes in half. I think they have 3-3. They might have 2-2, but I think they have 3-3. Don't quote me on that, though. You studied German for 3 years in college, and even though I knew general history, you had no idea the depths of the depravity. Yeah, man, it's horrible. Dude, the Stasi were like, they were soulless boogeymen. Yeah, Large Hadron Collider just came back online with fancy upgrades. Yup. Looking for dark matter. We'll see what they do. Why do they want out? His popularity level right now is really, really low. Boris Johnson is a politician that got his way in on bluster and populism, and he has lost a lot of the populism but still has the same bluster. He is a gaffe machine. He makes really stupid decisions in public where everybody can see it. He lies a lot. He does not have very high approval rating right now. Why do people not like Brexit? Yeah, pretty much. You had a question from a viewer today. He had a degree in history, and he asked, "Has there ever been such an anti-intellectual and bizarre period in history?" To be fair, Metrand, Maine used to be part of Massachusetts. When Massachusetts was first a state that controlled Maine, they allowed Maine to be independent when Missouri came into the Union as a way to balance out an addition of a free state and a slave state. So Missouri was applying to be a slave state. Massachusetts agreed to allow Maine to apply as a free state to keep the balance in the Senate. So you were technically correct, which is, of course, the best way to be correct. Has there ever been an anti-intellectual and bizarre period in history? Yeah, several. When Shi Huangti, the emperor of the Qin dynasty that was basically the first emperor of China, took over, one of the things that he decided was there's too much thinking going on. This was at the end of a period of time that was referred to as the 100 Schools of Philosophy. And Shi Huangti had his goons basically go in and try to destroy as much of the philosophy as possible. And he succeeded in many. There are a couple of the big Chinese philosophies, especially Chinese philosophies like Moism, that we know very little about except for after the fact attempts at recreating some of their stuff. He replaced this with a particular system called legalism, which was a weird sort of quasi-offshoot of Confucianism that basically said everybody is horrible, so the only way to put people in line is to make them follow the rules, and the law should be kind of like God. And of course, the emperor was the embodiment of the law, so do what he says. So that's one. And some of the Islamic expansions where especially conservative Muslim leaders took over areas of previous intellectual activity, they did a lot of destroying the intellectual stuff. Of course, the burning of the Library of Alexandria is an example. yeah, Persepolis, when it got raided in the initial stuff, to a certain extent, what happened in Greece when the Ottomans took over. Um, I could probably think of others if I really went at it. The issue today that makes today feel different is that we have instantaneous communication and we know. Oh yeah, the Khmer Rouge. That's a great example, Herring. That's a great example. So Pol Pot, this dictator in Cambodia, was a populist communist that took over and literally went after people that were university professors and killed them all. Killed people that were even students in university. Destroyed libraries and burned books, and that's a great example. And I can't believe that one slipped my mind. Great example of anti-intellectualism. So it's not unique. The issue is that we're living in the middle of it. We have exposure to instantaneous communication, which means that news as it develops rolls out in real time, and that makes it seem like it is an ever-growing threat, right? So if we're looking at ancient history, right? When Shi Huangti is destroying the 100 schools of philosophy, people in Rome had no idea what was going on, right? People just didn't know. If that happened today, everybody would know this afternoon, right? Because it's more present upon us because we have more exposure to it. Brondo, the thirst mutilator. Yeah, it's got electrolytes. It's what plants crave, right? Or we're talking about Florida. What's up, Moose? A lot of fascist and communist takeovers have some pretty crazy anti-intellectual portions. Yeah. To a certain extent, Lenin did that in Russia. Of course, the replacement of intellectual capacity in Germany, where they standardized the curriculum under Nazi rule. Same thing in Mao Zedong's China, with the Cultural Revolution, where they basically rewrote history and killed everybody that disagreed. You know, you're thinking about the comic book about Iran and the Islamic Revolution. Okay. That was a big... That had definite anti-intellectual stuff. So this is, of course, in the 70s when the Shah takes over after all that crazy mess with Iraq and America. And there was a big pushback, especially against Western ideology, including people that had been educated in the West. Those people were frequently targeted as potential political subversive individuals. Also, hey, Junk, good to see you. And Moose, I think I said hey, Moose. I guess it would make sense that she would choose that for the title of her graphic novel. Yeah. The Nazis and their hatred of Jewish science, correct. Yeah, right. Yeah. So we're on the same page there, Junk, yeah. A population that doesn't think is easier to control. That is absolutely correct. What plants crave, right? All right. Anybody else? Oh, there was a standard question book redeemed, and I saw it, and I didn't do it. All right, ladies and gents, here we go. This is the standard question book and home study outlines. It's a book full of questions. I don't have the textbook that goes with it with the answers, so it's just a bunch of questions. This is an antique book. It's now 110 years old, and the way that we do this is we just pick a page. And last time we went something really far in the front. Let's pick something really close to the back this time. How about you? This page. Yeah. Okay, this looks good. And I can't read any of this, so we'll just kind of go, you. What question are you? All right. Name some metals that have been used for making coins. Okay. Well, the first metals that were used were pretty easy to come by. Things like copper and even tin things like bronze and gold. Ironically, silver was not used very much in the oldest of coins because the technique to refine silver took a little bit longer to develop because it was not typically found in its pure natural state. It was usually found either impregnating other minerals or in alloy with other naturally occurring minerals, and you had to sort of refine it out. This sounds like an easy one. It is an easy one. Nickel, gold, silvers. Yeah, there we go. I mean, it's the actual question. This is where my finger landed. Let me see if I can get it. Name some metals that have been used for making coins. See? I'm not making it up. Name some metals that have been used for making coins. I think the opinion hat has been summoned already, so it might not be able to be summoned again. Yeah. Unobtainium. Are you asking if I will restock it so that you can do it again? Can you send me the question and then let me see if I want to answer it? We've got to have a poll before we leave. What would you like to order off of this menu? Oh, if it's just like... Oh, that's the question? What would I order off of that menu? Like if I could only pick one thing? This isn't really an opinion question, so I'll entertain this. I like looking at food. If I did get some appetizers, I would go with the Reuben Skins appetizer because that sounds amazing. I'm a sucker for sauerkraut and corned beef, man. Sucker for sauerkraut and corned beef. If I was going to dinner, that's what I would start with that. You like onions a lot. I'm not a big fan of onions. I'm sorry, not onions, mushrooms. They like mushrooms a lot. I'm not a big fan of mushrooms. I like onions quite a bit. Sorry, I said that wrong. Pork schnitzel cordon bleu sounds really freaking good. I would get all over that. Yeah, so that's what I would get. That's what I would get. Yeah, I mean, most of the stuff is pretty good looking. I don't have a problem with any of this. Well, and I would eat the stuff and just ask them not to put mushrooms on it. But yeah, that's pretty easy to do. No need to redeem the opinion hat for letting me see food. Now I'm actually really hungry. Really, really hungry. I choose the worst thing on the list. You had to pick a place to go for your birthday. This place looked different from most other places. Oh, that's cool. Happy birthday, Moose. Even if it's not nearby, happy birthday. All right. We've been on stream for like 2+ hours, and it is time to pick. So here's how we do this particular version of viewer request. So I'm going to carry over the number 2 winner from the last poll, and what I want from you all as I'm going to take the next 3 honest thoughts of what you think we should cover on the next viewer request. So just throw that junk in the chat. If you have something that's legitimate and interesting, throw it in. And if it's something I think we can cover, it'll go on the list. And then we'll all vote, and we'll have a good little time doing it. So just the next 3. So to let everybody know, the number 2 winner last time was Marco Polo. So he gets rolled over to this one. And then I'll take the next 3 answers from you all. So just throw them in there. Pacific exploration. Probably would have to narrow that one down a little bit, but I'll take it. Swedish Empire, we'll take that one. History of hip-hop. Okay. That's going to be interesting. All right, so we've got our 4. We've got our 4. So here's what's about to happen. I'm going to hit start poll, and then you'll see the poll appear as it is right now. If you look above you in the chat, there is a current poll. It says, what shall we cover next? And you get to go vote. You do not have to be a follower. You do not have to be a subscriber. Everybody that is in the room, all 25-ish viewers, you get to vote. You had to spell check Ethiopia. History of Ethiopia is pretty long. I would probably ask to sort of narrow that down. I am just going to be voting to cause a tie. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Moose. Everybody gets a chance to go vote. If you are in the room right now, you can go vote. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we've got 9 people voting. That's not even half of the people. You get to vote. It's like Oprah. Look under your chair. There's a vote. You get to go do it. Everybody gets to vote. Hey, there we go. We got some more votes coming in. We're up to almost half of the people now. I voted. Why does mobile not let me vote? I don't know, Tad. KP, can you explain quickly how to let Tad vote? Is it refresh stream? Do we get a sticker? You can, if you have a sticker, you can wear your own sticker. I don't even want to think about Oprah and politics. Well, yeah, everybody was trying to get her to run against Trump, right? We're not, dead people aren't voting. We are voting for dead people. You had to leave the stream and open it again to see the poll. So, Tad, maybe do the refresh and see if that'll get you there. The church that has my polling location gave out cookies and punch. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody likes some cookies. Not in Georgia. Not in Georgia. You cannot give anything to people waiting to vote in Georgia. You might be able to give it to them after they vote, but you can't give them even water. You cannot even walk up and give them water in Georgia. All right. Swedish Empire. Interesting choice, ladies and gentlemen. Swedish Empire wins with 7 votes. Pacific Exploration comes in on number 5. Marco Polo, and then hip-hop. Been waiting a long time to get your take on this topic. Even got over double the points needed. Well, Metrand, here's the great thing about it. The beauty of the vote is you now don't have to spend your points. And you can spend those on something else, right? Swedish Empire would have been your second choice. Cool. That's such a strange topic, but you know nothing about it, so you'll learn why. Yeah, so the Swedish Empire was actually one of the more powerful empires that started in the late 1400s and ran through arguably like the late 1600s. It depends on exactly when you want to cut it down. But at one point, they were really influential in European politics, including beating the crap out of the Holy Roman Empire for a while. So, there you go. You're going to be swimming in points. You know what you have to do? Start doing an episode on Switzerland and say that you got it mixed up. Yeah, Gustavus Adolphus. There you go. JMR's on board, right? They even held Moscow. Yeah, they were all over the place. They were all over the place. Yeah, so this is going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to have to be a little bit quick because of trying to cram probably 300 years into one stream. But I've done that before. We'll just hit the high points. But it'll still be interesting. That's good stuff. So we will do ourselves some Swedish Empire stuff. That's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that, actually. All right. So let us look around and see who we can go raid. We just covered this topic in chat tonight, so we're good. Next topic. Well, if you don't get through it all, you got the points for more like part 2 of Swedish history. We'll see how it turns out. I might take you up on that. I mean, we'll see. Sometimes I get in the middle of a discussion and I go, I don't need to cover this in one thing. I need to do this in 2 things. Like the Visigoths and the Franks. I was like, I should do these in separate streams. So maybe, no, I don't know. Maybe I'll get in the middle of prepping Swedish Empire and it will, in fact, turn into 2 streams. I mean, there's plenty of information that could make it to Sweden Reloaded. What up, Tuna? You're the arbiter of the ending. Yeah. It happens, and alas. But it is good to see you. I hope you're doing well. All right. Let's go do ourselves a raid. Who is around? I think we're going to go raid Smite Knight. Smite Knight is a political commentator here on Twitch. Also has some background in history, which I approve of. And we're going to go pop in on Smite and see what's going on in their world over there. What's up, Martest? Good to see you. I see you back there. All right, so I'm going to hit the button. We'll do ourselves the start of a raid. So the next time you will definitely see me is on Thursday. We'll be here Thursday, 1900 Central Standard Time. And we are going to be talking about imperial reforms in the 7th century of Japan. Stuff that I really dig. And I hope that you'll enjoy it too. So come on back and see us then. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Really good stream. I had a great time. It's unfortunately weird stuff, you know, talking about torture and psychological damage and stuff like that. But history's not pretty. And sometimes you got to talk about the dirty stuff to understand by comparison that things aren't necessarily as bad now. So she's all I want and I waited for so long. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. I hope you have a good one. Until Thursday, take it easy. Oh, by the way, yell adventure when we get there. And if you got those hats, throw those in the chat too. Thanks everybody so much. Have a good one. See you around.